2 years ago, I never thought I'd be pouring coffee in a rundown diner instead of managing multi-million-dollar portfolios. My name is Catherine Wells, and I used to run Chicago's financial world. Corner offices, $80 million under management, clients who trusted me with fortunes most only dream of, and a BMW that screamed success. But one betrayal changed everything. My son, Michael, forged my signature and stole millions. And by the time the FBI stormed my office, my career and life as I knew it were gone. By 72, I had $47 in my bank account and a tiny studio apartment in a neighborhood where sirens were constant. That's when Murphy's Diner gave me a chance to start over. The coffee was terrible, the vinyl cracked, but the honesty of the work gave me purpose again. Then he walked in, Harrison Blackwell. Every inch the powerful businessman, Italian leather shoes, phone glued to his ear, yet unaware his empire was on the edge. As I poured his coffee, my eyes caught something in the chaos of his papers, a red flag, a warning. Without thinking, I said, "You're on a path to bankruptcy in 6 months." He chuckled. I didn't. The very next morning, rain soaking him, he stood at my door, desperate for the one person he never expected to find in a diner. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and comment below to share where you're watching from. Your story matters, and this journey is just getting started. 2 years before Murphy's Diner became my sanctuary, I was Catherine Wells, senior partner at Wells & Associates Financial Consulting. My life was a string of achievements, corner offices with sweeping views of downtown Chicago, portfolios worth over $80 million in clients who included tech moguls, real estate titans, and old money families who trusted me with generational wealth. Every day was a high-stakes game, but I played it well. My schedule was ruthless, but success had its rewards: luxury cars, elegant dinners, and the kind of respect that comes only when people know you hold the keys to their fortunes. Then Michael, my son, decided to rewrite our story. In what felt like a single heartbeat, the foundation of everything I'd built crumbled. He forged my signature on multiple accounts, moving money like a magician, hiding $2.7 million in plain sight. The FBI raid came on an October morning, sharp and unrelenting, storming through our mahogany doors as though they were claiming the empire I'd spent decades constructing. Every award, every diploma, every symbol of my success was swept up in the chaos. I wasn't just betrayed by my son. I was erased from the life I had known. The media had a feast. Headlines screamed about the financial advisor's son, leaving my name forever linked to the scandal. Civil lawsuits piled up, followed by criminal investigations that cleared me legally but shredded my professional credibility. Clients who once trusted me like family now avoided me like the plague. By Christmas, I was 72, my checking account held $47, and I had traded my high-rise apartment for a cramped studio where the wail of sirens replaced the city's symphony of opportunity. It was in that void that Murphy's Diner appeared, not as a symbol of failure, but as a chance to rebuild. The work was honest and raw, the coffee bitter, the vinyl cracked, the fluorescent lights unflinching. Yet, every plate I carried, every customer I served, reminded me of something long forgotten: resilience. I learned to move with patience, to navigate human tempers and quirks, and to reclaim dignity one shift at a time. Here, in the hum of a small diner, I found rhythm, purpose, and a new understanding of what it meant to truly persevere. In those quiet mornings and relentless rush hours, I unknowingly prepared for a moment that would change everything again. The skills I honed, the keen eye for patterns, the ability to read chaos, and the resilience forged from personal loss, would soon become the lifeline of a man whose empire teetered on collapse. A chance encounter was waiting, ready to reconnect me to the world I thought I'd lost forever. It was a Thursday morning in March, Chicago undecided between winter and spring, gray drizzle hanging over the streets. Murphy's Diner was winding down from the breakfast rush, the air thick with the scent of burnt coffee and scrambled eggs. That's when Harrison Blackwell walked in. He moved with the confidence of someone who owned the skyline, his tailored suit and polished shoes a stark contrast to the cracked vinyl booths and flickering fluorescent lights. Harrison's phone calls were loud, hostile takeovers and real estate acquisitions spilling into the diner like a tidal wave of wealth and authority. Most people ignored him, but my eyes, trained by decades managing multi-million-dollar portfolios, scanned his scattered papers and immediately spotted danger. Leverage ratios too high, cash flow stretched thin, debt exceeding assets. In short, bankruptcy waiting just around the corner. I approached, careful but firm. "Sir, you're heading for serious trouble," I said, voice carrying just enough for him to hear over the phone. He glanced up, surprise etched on his face. "Financial advice from a waitress," he scoffed, dismissing my words like they were noise. But when I laid out the warning signs, brief, precise, undeniable, his confident mask faltered. The next morning, he returned. Rain-slicked hair, soaked suit, desperation lurking behind his pale blue eyes. "I need your help," he said, words heavy with vulnerability. I reminded him I was a waitress, not a consultant. But he knew my name, Catherine Wells. The city remembered. The expert whose life had fallen apart in scandal. And now, the empire he had built teetered on ruin, and he needed the very expertise the world had told me I no longer had. In that moment, the diner, its burnt coffee, cracked booths, and fluorescent hum, became the bridge back to a world I thought I'd lost. One conversation, one insight, would set in motion a journey that could restore not only a failing company, but the shattered remnants of my own professional identity. The moment Harrison left Murphy's that morning, the weight of my own history hit me harder than I expected. 2 years of humiliation, of watching the life I'd built crumble because of my son's greed, had been carved into me. Every step I took back into the financial world now carried the memory of betrayal, loss, and the sting of public shame. Sitting in the empty diner, I replayed the encounter over and over. He needed help, yet he approached me, the waitress, because he knew I was the one who could see through chaos. It was flattering, yes, but terrifying. Could I trust myself again? Could I risk another professional failure after the FBI raid, lawsuits, and shattered reputation? My hands trembled slightly as I poured coffee. The routine task reminded me how far I had fallen, and yet how far I could rise. The flood of emotions didn't stop there. Anger at Michael for destroying everything I worked for. Regret over trusting him too easily. Shame at how low I had sunk, working long hours for tips just to survive. And beneath it all, a flicker of hope, stubborn and fragile, refusing to be extinguished. For the first time in years, I felt the dual pull of fear and possibility, the exact tension that had once driven me to success. At night, in the solitude of my studio apartment, I traced every portfolio, every financial lesson I had learned, trying to see if the spark still lived inside me. It was like waking a sleeping giant. My expertise, my instincts, my ability to recognize patterns and spot risk. The scars of the past made me cautious, but they also sharpened my insight. This emotional turmoil was not weakness, it was preparation. Every embarrassment, every late-night self-doubt, every bite of burnt diner food was shaping me for what was to come. Harrison's empire was at risk, and I was standing at the threshold of redemption. Could I rise from the wreckage once more? Could I take someone else's chaos and transform it into order, while finally reclaiming my own life? It was terrifying, exhilarating, and painfully humbling. I realized then that I had a choice: remain broken and forgotten, or step back into the fire, using everything I had learned, not just about finance, but about resilience, courage, and human frailty, to fight back. My fall had been long, but it had given me a perspective no one else could possess. And for the first time, I felt ready to act. The next morning, Harrison returned. Rain drizzled against the diner's windows, washing the city in gray, but I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. He stepped inside, drenched and disheveled, holding a folder that looked heavier than his pride. The man who had dismissed me as a waitress just a day before now sought my expertise, recognizing in me something more than a title or a past reputation. I listened as he pored over the numbers, detailing the precarious state of Blackwell Enterprises. My trained eye immediately spotted the red flags: leverage ratios too high, cash flows misaligned, and risky investments masked by glossy reports. Every instinct screamed at me, reminding me why I had once been the best in Chicago. Negotiation began, my terms, my authority. If I was going to step back into this world, it had to be on my rules. Complete access, no off-limits files, and the freedom to recommend decisive action. He agreed. Hesitation lingered, but desperation had pushed him to trust me. I sat with the files for hours, dissecting every line, every balance sheet, every subtle pattern that betrayed instability. It was as though I were reconnecting with a lost part of myself, my mind alive, precise, and ruthless in its efficiency. I realized that the chaos around me, the collapse of someone else's empire, was now the battlefield where I could reclaim my own strength. By afternoon, the outline of a strategy began to form. Immediate action was required: liquidate failing subsidiaries, cut losses on high-risk investments, and redirect resources toward consistent performers that others had ignored. It was surgical, precise, and undeniably risky, but necessary. As I shared my recommendations with Harrison, I saw a shift in him. The skepticism faded, replaced by trust and reliance. For the first time, I wasn't just Catherine Wells, the woman ruined by her son. I was a force capable of turning chaos into opportunity. That day marked more than a business decision. It was a personal resurrection. Every doubt, every fear, every tear shed in my tiny studio apartment now fueled me. I wasn't stepping back into finance merely to save a company. I was stepping back into life to reclaim dignity, purpose, and the mastery that had once defined me. The turning point wasn't just about numbers on a page. It was about realizing that even after betrayal, loss, and humiliation, someone could rise again with sharper instincts, clearer vision, and a courage forged in fire. Harrison's empire was on the brink, but so was my second chance, and I intended to seize it fully. The boardroom was tense, the kind of silence that makes every breath sound like a misstep. 11 skeptical faces stared at me as I laid out the surgical turnaround plan for Blackwell Enterprises. The rain outside pattered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, a reminder that the world continued, indifferent to our struggles. Marcus Webb, the board chairman, was the first to speak. His voice carried both authority and disdain. Abandon our high-profile investments. You're proposing we throw away prestige for the sake of numbers. I met his glare without flinching. These aren't just numbers, Mr. Webb. They're patterns, outcomes, and survival strategies. The Miami project is bleeding cash. The subsidiaries are underperforming. The overlooked tech investments are generating steady, reliable returns. The data speaks for itself. The board murmured. Some leaned forward, intrigued. Others shifted uncomfortably, clinging to pride over pragmatism. I continued dissecting the projections, explaining the reasoning, showing the consequences of inaction. Every word, every slide, every calculation was a hammer striking against skepticism. Webb's patience snapped. This reeks of desperation. Bringing in a former waitress as a consultant undermines confidence. His accusation was sharp, meant to cut, to humiliate. Yet, the room no longer saw me as just a waitress. They saw Catherine Wells, a strategist capable of reading chaos and turning it into opportunity. Harrison supported me quietly but firmly. The plan is sound. The numbers validate her approach. We move forward or risk total collapse. The vote was close. 5 in favor, 4 against, 2 abstained. The plan passed. Relief mixed with tension. The company had a lifeline, but danger still lurked. Webb wasn't finished. I could feel it, the calculated glare, the subtle moves, the waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Over the next week, we executed the plan. The Miami property sold to a distressed asset developer, cutting our losses. Underperforming subsidiaries were liquidated, their proceeds redirected to profitable investments. Harrison followed my guidance without hesitation, swallowing pride for the survival of his company. The revenue began to stabilize. The overlooked tech investments started showing measurable growth. But the climax wasn't just about numbers. It was about the personal stakes behind every decision. Harrison's risk-taking had been driven by grief from a lost family. Understanding that allowed me to tailor the strategy with empathy, balancing risk with calculated precision. The stakes were human as much as financial. By the end of the week, Blackwell Enterprises was no longer teetering on the edge. It had solid ground beneath its feet. Webb's campaign against Harrison had been thwarted, his manipulation exposed through decisive action and strategic foresight. The empire was not only surviving, it was reclaiming its strength. For me, the climax represented more than corporate victory. It was proof that even after ruin, one could rise with precision, courage, and clarity. I wasn't just saving company. I was proving that resilience, experience, and integrity could overcome betrayal, loss, and doubt. The world had tested me, and now I had answered back with undeniable force. The aftermath of the boardroom showdown settled like dust after a storm. Blackwell Enterprises was stabilizing, the immediate crisis contained, but the echoes of conflict lingered. Harrison and I spent long evenings reviewing new projections, analyzing every move, and ensuring that the company's recovery stayed on course. Each report confirmed what we had worked so hard to achieve. Revenue was up, debt was being reduced, and profitable sectors were growing steadily. Yet Marcus Webb's shadow still loomed. His subtle sabotage, previously masked behind boardroom diplomacy, was now exposed. He had underestimated our resilience, the precision of the turnaround, and my unwavering focus. The FBI investigation had already gathered evidence of his past conspiracies, but the timing was critical. Webb's desperation became more visible with each decision, his attempts to regain control increasingly erratic. I could feel Harrison's relief, but also the weight he carried from years of personal loss and the burden of rebuilding a crumbling empire. He trusted me in ways he hadn't trusted anyone since the tragedy of losing his family. Our partnership had shifted from professional necessity to mutual respect, a bond forged in chaos and reinforced through relentless strategy. Beyond the numbers, I noticed a subtle change in the company culture. Employees who had doubted our leadership began to follow our guidance, inspired by the clarity and decisiveness of the new direction. Confidence returned, not through charm or empty promises, but through results, tangible proof that the empire could survive and thrive. On a quieter note, the personal growth for both of us was undeniable. Harrison allowed himself moments of vulnerability, and I learned to balance authority with empathy. Every decision carried weight, but now it was balanced with understanding the human element behind every financial move. The lessons from my own downfall, betrayal, loss, and starting over had prepared me for this, giving me the insight to navigate both professional and emotional landscapes simultaneously. As weeks passed, the company stabilized and Marcus Webb's influence waned. The evidence collected by the FBI confirmed his manipulations and fraudulent schemes, leaving him powerless against the law. Blackwell Enterprises stood not only as a restored business, but as a testament to strategic foresight, resilience, and unwavering determination. For me, the fallout wasn't just about the company surviving. It was the affirmation that recovery is possible, that trust and expertise could rebuild what was nearly destroyed. Harrison regained hope, the employees regained confidence, and I regained purpose. We had faced a storm, and now the calm revealed everything we had fought for: survival, justice, and the strength to keep moving forward. Months passed, and the rebuilding of Blackwell Enterprises reached a point where its recovery was no longer fragile. It was undeniable. Revenue stabilized, previously overlooked investments flourished, and the company earned back the trust of its clients and stakeholders. The meticulous restructuring, combined with the strategic liquidation of failing projects, had transformed a teetering empire into a model of efficiency and resilience. Marcus Webb, once a looming threat, had been arrested and faced prosecution for his orchestrated schemes. His downfall served as a powerful reminder that manipulation and greed, no matter how sophisticated, could not prevail against determination, skill, and integrity. The FBI's investigation validated the painstaking work we had done, proving that Blackwell Enterprises' revival was built on expertise, not luck. For Harrison, the recovery was more than financial, it was personal redemption. He learned to reconcile with his past losses, understanding that risky decisions were often fueled by grief rather than strategy. With the company on solid footing, he could finally begin to rebuild his life beyond the walls of the office, finding balance between ambition and human connection. For me, the journey came full circle. From a high-powered financial advisor to a waitress struggling to survive, and now back to the forefront of corporate consulting, I had endured betrayal, loss, and public humiliation. Yet, through resilience, strategic insight, and unwavering focus, I had reclaimed not just my career but my identity. Wells Strategic Consulting had grown into a respected independent consultancy with a waiting list of corporations seeking turnaround expertise. My name was once again synonymous with trust and financial acumen. But the true resolution was not in numbers or titles. It was in the relationships forged along the way. Harrison and I had discovered a partnership built on mutual respect and shared experience. I had proven to myself that age, misfortune, and public shame could never define my capacity to fight back and succeed. The victories were sweeter because they were earned through persistence and integrity rather than chance. As I looked out over the city skyline from Harrison's restored office, I reflected on the lessons of the past years. That loss can teach resilience, betrayal can teach caution, and redemption is earned one deliberate step at a time. No one can erase what you've learned, and no one can diminish the strength you've built through adversity. At 73, I had discovered that it was never too late to reclaim your life, to rebuild what was broken, and to rise stronger than ever before. Success after ruin was not only possible, it was inevitable for those who refused to stay down. In the end, we had not only saved a company but restored hope, proved justice and affirmed that perseverance triumphs over destruction.